The devil's on the loose and he's dancing with the mummy.
Doc Mark and Chorus, the Little Mummy, here to bring you another episode of Macabre Cast, where we'll be dropping R's where they belong and adding them where they don't. I want to talk a little bit about a Dracula film that gets overlooked a lot, and that's Dracula from 1979 with Frank Langella as Dracula, the rated R version. This was kind of panned a little bit by critics, if I remember correctly, and a lot of people sort of dismiss it. But it's got a great cast. Laurence Olivier is Van Helsing. Donald Pleasence is Dr. John Stewart. They do some weird things, like they make Mina Van Helsing's daughter, which is that strange, but it's not that big of a deal. Frank Langella is certainly not my favorite Dracula. I've said many times I have two favorites. It's Lugosi and Christopher Lee. And as I've said before, is Lugosi was Dracula and Lee scared us. I've said that forever. And Langella's fine. It's just definitely not my favorite. Maybe because he's too pretty looking. I don't know. But this movie is generally really creepy. There's a lot of great stuff in this movie. When Dracula does the wall climbing stuff, those shots are excellent, even for 1979. And when Mina comes out of the grave and she's like, "Father, Father." Movie has a lot of great creepy stuff. And Laurence Olivier, and no matter what he's in, he's fantastic. Same with Donald Pleasence. It doesn't matter how bad a script could be. Donald Pleasence just brings his A game every time. And the tagline for this movie is kind of long. Throughout history, he has filled the hearts of men with terror and the hearts of women with desire. That just seems long for a tagline. But this movie really doesn't get the credit it deserves.
Frank Langella is too pretty? Is that what you said? He's too pretty?
Yeah, well, what I mean is, like, he kind of comes across as a model. He just, he's, I don't know, maybe too suave and debonair and good-looking. I mean, actually, when I think of a vampire, I think of more like Nosferatu, the 1922 version, where he's like a plague. He's like this disgusting vermin thing. That to me would be the undead. That to me would be a vampire. But, again, regardless of liking Frank Langella or not, Dracula 1979 has a lot to like about it. You got music from John Williams, and right there, Mr. Jaws and Star Wars himself. This was directed by John Badham, who did one of my favorite late 70s dramas, Saturday Night Fever. I love that movie. But this is definitely, if you have never seen it, it's definitely worth a watch. Dracula 1979. Is it the best Dracula? No. And do I dare say, and I'm going to get a lot of grief for this, this is far better than Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, which I wasn't crazy about. And most of that was because of casting. My wife loves it, but I'm just not a fan. And I love Coppola. I love his films. But I did not like that, and mostly because of the casting. But Dracula 1979. If you've never seen it, check it out, or let me know what you think of this film. Deep Death Dive. This week's Deep Death Dive, we are continuing with part 2 of Change is Good. This is where I asked if there was one particular horror film that you could change something in to make it better, or maybe change the franchise as a whole, if there was a franchise. And Horror Chat Matt's going to chime in with an idea he had, but I was going to point one out again myself. And I'm going to go with American Werewolf in London from 1981. Now, don't get me wrong, because I love this movie. And this was the infamous film that my mom took me and my good friend Dan to see, unbeknownst to her that there would be this big, long montage scene of the main character, David, and his lovemaking escapade with his nurse, which they left nothing to be unseen, so to speak. My mother was mortified. But anyway, if I was to change anything, there are only 3 sections of this movie where a werewolf wreaks havoc or takes victims. I would have definitely suggest adding more werewolf time and more victims, or maybe even other people becoming werewolves during this, or just something a little more werewolf to this movie. Although I do love the film and think it was great, would like to have seen more werewolf.
I'm guessing there was no parents' guide back in 1981. Your poor mom.
Yes, she basically melted into the seats that day. And no parents' guide, you're correct. But, when they rate movies, when they make them rated R, there's usually a reason. Now, without further ado, Hardchat Matt's got a change for a film that he would have liked to have seen. And I believe this is a Friday the 13th again. I didn't think there was anyone else out there so obsessed with the Friday the 13th franchise other than me. But this Hardchat Matt.
Hey, Doc, Mark, and Karis, Hardchat Matt here. And finally getting around to giving you a response for your deep death dive. And the one thing I would change in a movie franchise would be Friday the 13th, Part 5. Tommy Jarvis was originally played by Corey Feldman in the final chapter from 1984. And then in 1985, I believe he was filming The Goonies and couldn't make it to film Part 5. He did have a brief cameo at the beginning, but then to get around him not being available, they flash forward several years, and he was replaced by John Shepherd. And then in 86, when Friday the 13th, Jason Lives came out, John Shepherd was replaced by Tom Matthews. But I feel if Corey Feldman was able to be in Part 5 and possibly Part 6, they would totally have to change the story, as he was still a young kid, and they wouldn't be flash forwarding into the future. And I'm curious what they would have done in that situation. Anyways, Dark Mark, keep up the great work of bringing the macabre to your legion of monster kids, and I look forward to next week's episode.
Yes, I agree, Hardchat. I would have loved to have seen Corey Feldman return. And even if they had to change the story like that, it could only make it better. Remember I mentioned Mutilator 2, the sequel to the 1980 slasher film Mutilator? I think I mentioned it a while back. Wondering where it is, why it hasn't been released? They're still looking for a distributor. I'm mystified as to why they can't get this done, unless it's just truly that bad. But yeah, Mutilator 2, still looking for a distributor. Thank you, Brownie. That's Brownie, the corpse-sniffing dog.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
That's right, you got it, Monster Kids. When we hear that putrid theme, we know it's just time for Horrible Mention. This week's Horrible Mention goes to The Happening from 2008. Directed and written by M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong, starring Mark Wahlberg as Elliot and Zooey Deschanel as Alma. Elliot Wahlberg is a high school science teacher who's talking to his class about an article in the New York Times and the sudden disappearance of bees. What's the big deal, you ask? Well, hold on to your hats, kids, because this is just the beginning of strange behavior and goings-on that spread from Central Park throughout the city as an invisible threat begins to alter human behavior. Elliot and his wife, Alma, try to comprehend it all while everyone else runs far from the contaminated area to a hopeful, safe place. There are mass suicides and talks of terrorism that fill the news channels. I know, this sounds good, right? Sounds frightening. Well, no, it leads to a whole lot of nothing, and unless you fancy, spoiler alert, nature gets revenge twists. Sorry, M. Night, you're hit or miss, and this time, in my eyes, this is a miss. And although I know a lot of people will disagree with me, that is this week's Horrible Mention, The Happening from 2008. by M. Night Shyamalama Ding Dong.
That's really aggressive and rude. How would you like it if someone referred to you as Darky Mark or something silly like that? You don't have to be rude.
Hi there, it's Grim Kim. I'm back. Boy, it's funny how life catches you off guard and you end up with a million things to do and unable to contribute to my Macabre Cast. And I've been enjoying listening to you others for the last 2 weeks. I'm back with another edition of a Grim Kim horror tale. Now, I was hoping to just sit down right now and finish this tale. However, instead, I'm waiting for AAA because I went outside and I have a big fat flat tire. So, I'm going to drop the first half of my story. This one's a little bit longer anyway because I don't want to miss the deadline. My apologies, but you know what? Kismet, and it's all meant to be.
Grim Fairy Tales with Grim Kim.
The name of this story, I believe, I just thought of it. I think I will name it By the Light of the Shimmering Moon. Away we go. Fern wanted to run, like she had never run before, the tendrils of fear curling around her ankles, insisting she stay firmly planted in place. Her sister's voice rang in her head. Fern, it's time. Time to do all that we have planned on. Now find our spot and wait for me. Do not come out until you hear my special code word. You know Mother of the Womb knows how to mimic my voice, but listen for that high cicada trill that underlies her vocal cords that will tell you it's her and not me. Fern, gingerly, wormed her way around each thin wooden stem in the thicket. Trick was to do it in a creeping fashion, not allowing any part of her body to touch anything except her feet. Around her, it worked better to pretend she did not have arms at all. In fact, Mother of the Womb used to bind Fern's and sister's hands behind their backs when she made them kneel on the sharp-dried anise stars as punishment for not collecting enough badger blood for the high moon ceremony. The girls could take all the violent punishment the tribe passed out, but the killing of innocent creatures for some insane ceremony, just so the adults could get high on peyote and act out their animalistic fantasies, was something the sisters could not stomach. Nor would they. Lingula hated her name. Tongue in Latin. Lingula hated her elder parents. Her parents did not exist within the tribe. Lingula hated her fate. The aspect of the high moon ritual soon in all it entailed. She was 13 summers. Fern was 9 summers. And so, when word was proclaimed that not only would Lingula be indoctrinated under the high moon by the blood of a firstborn, but Fern would be too. The quality of the sisters, the presumed magic, the compounded fear of the initiated, would bring fortune to the tribe for decades. Father of the Moon had decreed it, and so it was. Except it wasn't. Gonna leave you there with a little cliffhanger. And the sisters will be here waiting for you. Next Macabre Theater. Enjoy your week.
Grim Fairy Tales with Grim Kim.
Wow, so great to have you back, Grim Kim. And the Grim Fairy Tales, awesome. And can't wait to hear the conclusion to that one.
I'm just glad we didn't go another week grimless. Welcome back, Grim Kim. Well, you should probably say your goodbyes now, Dark.
Until next time, stay on the road, keep clear of the moors, and beware the moon. But most of all, be good to yourself. This is Dark Mark, signing off. See you soon. This is a Macabre Theater production.